Typically, when you go through a breakup, people will tell you to take some time to improve yourself before getting back into the dating scene. I say those people are stupid. Instead, you should do what you've always done. Because, I mean, whatever you did the first time around worked to get you into that original relationship, so no, Cheryl, I'm not getting rid of the Gardevoir Love Doll, it's a collector's item. Anyways, that mantra shines through with this video. While rotation on March 27th in Pokemon TCG Live removes all F-block cards from Standard and the new Journey Together set launches on that same day, you don't actually need to add any of those new cards to many of your existing decks to keep on winning. While some really dumb YouTubers tricked you into thinking that Iono's Bellibolt EX would make Raging Bolt better, the ones you can actually trust knew the old version would still be the best. For each deck, I'll be showing you the cards it loses to rotation and what you can replace them with. Looking at Raging Bolt, Switchcart, Radiant Greninja, and Pokestop are all gone. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't that bad. Yeah, Radiant Greninja was amazing at drawing cards and getting energy in the discard pile for Sada's Vitality, but Earthen Vessel and Squawkabilly are more than adequate replacements. Pokestop is a card I will not miss, but Switchcart is. Post-rotation, we just have Switch, Prime Catcher, Surfer, and I think Kieran as our Switch cards, making Pokemon like Maractus, who prevent retreating, that much stronger. While it's not ideal, Latias EX has to be in your Raging Bolt deck come Journey Together. You need a way to retreat your basic Pokemon, and that's literally Latias's one job. Just like how a woman's job is to subscribe to me. That 5% female viewership hasn't gone up. But you can change that. Anyways, Jamming Tower isn't quite Lost Vacuum, but it does shut off tools and bump whatever stadium is in play, essentially giving you a 2-for-1. Which is also the deal I get at Mistress Paddlebottoms on Monday afternoons. See, I support female-owned businesses. If that's not a good enough reason to subscribe, I don't know what is. Of course, Prime Catcher is your ace spec here. It's a Switch card and a Gust card, making it ideal for the Angry Giraffe. Here's what Raging Bolt will look like on March 27th once all the F-block cards are out of Standard. It's kinda similar to Raging Bolt right now. Except just like when you turned 13 and your divorced dad wanted to take you out for a birthday dinner, you're going to Hooters. The two different Bolt builds either run a 3-3 Noctowl or a 2-2. You already play Teal Masked Ogerpon for card draw and energy acceleration to boost Raging Bolt's damage, meaning you'll always have a Terra down for Noctowl to work. Crispin's great early for getting energy out of the deck, with Sada what you'll be using most other turns to get a Raging Bolter. In the 2-2 Noctowl build, it's pretty much the same thing. Fan Rotom gets your Hooters and a Noctowl or 2 turn 1, Mew and Squawkabilly are great for card draw, and Jamming Tower helps shut off annoying tools like Sparkling Crystal and TM Evolution and Bravery Charm and Hero's Cape. Yes, you do play a Bravery Charm on your own, but that's more of a break in case of emergency than what your deck relies on. To deal with Mimikyu and Aegislash and put your opponent on odd prizes, there's 2 Fan Rotom who do 70 damage for a single energy. You do want one other single prizer, which is where Slither Wing, Baby Bolt, and Koraidon come in. Slither Wing does 120 and burns, while also having the flexibility of slowly milling your opponent, except it costs 2 fighting. Koraidon takes 2 colorless to deal 180 damage, but you have to have attacked with a Raging Bolt the previous turn. And the Baby Bolt, which is the least played of the 3, is mostly just a Snipe 60 attacker. For all the super nerds out there worried about Lilia's Clefairy EX, yes, there is a way to remove Raging Bolt's weakness. You can attach protective goggles to Raging Bolt, but it's not as helpful as you might think. With 11 total bench Pokemon in play, Clefairy can still one-shot you. Since a lot of Clefairy decks run their own Area 0, if you have 3 bench Pokemon down and they have 8, oopsie, your Bolt is zapped. I looked at plenty of other Japanese lists for Raging Bolt, and a few other cards worth looking at are Briar, Splup Ditto, Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon, and Badoo. Briar allows you to take an extra prize card with the Teal Masked Ogerpon, Ditto lets you choose any basic on turn 1 if it's in the active, Cornerstone Masked is a little awkward but can buy you a turn, and Badoo is annoying as hell. So yes, while Raging Bolt EX does lose a few good cards with rotation, it still remains an A to S tier deck, able to take big one-hit KOs whenever it needs to. What about our old friend Charizard EX? No, not that Charizard EX, the good one. Well, it's actually in a really good spot post-rotation. That shouldn't come as a surprise. Its ability accelerates 3 energy into play and it can deal up to 330 damage for 2 energy. Honestly, the only way this card will fade away before it rotates in March 2026 is if we get amazing Grass-type Pokemon. And even then, you could just chuck in a couple of good Fire-type attackers. Unfortunately, Radiant Charizard isn't one of them, as it does rotate on the 27th. So Charizard loses its best backup attacker, who is able to one-shot Grass and Metal types through weakness for as little as 1 energy. But it doesn't stop there. Rotom V and Lumineon V are gone, and so is for a Seal Stone, absolutely decimating Charizard's early game potential. And for cards that added a little spice to the Hot Lizard, Thornton, Lost Vacuum, and Collapse Stadium also rotate. As a quick note, you may have noticed that a lot of F-block cards have yellow borders. If you're going through your physical collection at home and can't read, just look for a yellow border to know if it's no longer standard legal. Post-rotation, Charizard does look a little different. Of course, pairing it with Pidgeot EX in the Dusknoir line is still a great idea. Quick Search lets you grab any card you want every single turn while Dusknoir blows itself, thus powering up Charizard's Burning Darkness attack. But just like with Raging Bolt, another bird is the word. Noctowl has made its way into about half of the most successful Charizard lists in Japan. While Charizard is a Terra, it's a Stage 2, meaning you can't activate Noctowl's ability early. That's where the turtle comes in. Not only does it allow you to use Noctowl's Jewel Seeker, but it's a non-ability attacker who can deal up to 240 damage with a full bench. Not having an ability is huge because Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is going to be poking its head out like a turtle quite a bit post-rotation. You do get bodied by Milotic EX though, since its ability prevents damage from Terras and your best attackers are Terras. The first Charizard list doesn't do too much. You remove the best rotating cards, replace them with nothing, and call it a day. The sad reality of post-rotation Charizard is that there's no replacing Rotom V or Forest Sealstone or Radiant Charizard. On the bright side, Charizard's still an A-tier deck thanks to its ability and attack, it just loses that early game power. Precious Trolley's the ace back here to fill up your bench turn 1. This frees up space for extra cards like Mist Energy to block damage counters and status conditions, and Chi-Yu as a single prize attacker who can deal up to 140 damage for 2 energy. For the flex cards, Cleffa and Badoo are always great options. They're both free retreaters with Cleffa drawing you cards and Badoo shutting off their items. Brock Stouting exists because Badoo is the worst card ever printed, and Badoo is also the reason why you play 2 TM Evolution, multiple Stage 1s, and just 3 Rare Candy. Lastly, Gravity Mountain allows you to one-shot Stage 2s, potentially a turn earlier. Looking closer at the ace specs, Precious Trolley is great because it allows you to put everyone you need on the bench right away, all with a simple Arven search. But Hero's Cape gives Charizard 430 HP, making it that much tougher to KO. And Maximum Belt lets you take big KOs earlier in the game. I'll also show you Sparkling Crystal, which reduces the attack cost of Terras by 1 energy and will be notable in a minute. I will spare you any more waiting. The Noctowl build of Charizard removes Pidgeot entirely. With all that freed up space, you can go for a full 4-4 line. This list is a great starting off point, which is a nice way of saying it's super boring. Fan Rotom deals with any annoying Badoo that try to shut off your rare candy. Dusclops and Dusknoir help soften up big targets or get rid of a potential weak threat. And Briar lets you take that extra prize card when your opponent has 2 left. Remember when I teased Sparkling Crystal? This is where it shines brightest. To help shore up Charizard's weaknesses, aka Milotic, you run Wellspring Mask Ogerpon and Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. Sparkling Crystal reduces the attack cost of all 3 of your Terra Pokemon by 1 of any energy, meaning you can power up all of them with Charizard's ability. Because of this focus on Ogerpon, Dusknoir takes a bit of a backseat, though it is still present, constantly asking, are we there yet? Cornerstone Mask's ability blocks damage from Milotic, while its attack goes through Milotic's ability. And Wellspring Mask is perfect for sniping bench Pokemon. Until Shaman arrives at the end of May, you can use it to pick off weak bench sitters like Dracloak, while also putting the attached mana back into your deck, which you can accelerate again later with either Charizard or Crispin. The list also plays a copy of Turo's Scenario, allowing you to reuse a Charizard or Noctowl. If you're concerned that I'm getting too old to whack off, don't be. I found this Charizard list with the Dunsparce. A really fun combo that's been showing up post-rotation is the Dunsparce with Enriching Energy. It only works in energy accelerating decks like Gardevoir and Charizard, so why not try it out here? While it doesn't offer the targeted draw of Noctowl or Pidgeot, it does allow you to draw 7 cards every turn using a Dunsparce's ability plus Enriching Energy's effect. Just ignore that a Dunsparce EX, that's a new card, we don't like those in this video. I know I already featured Dragapult EX in my old decks with new cards video, but just like when I tell my Twitch subscribers that I appreciate them, I only did that because I felt obligated to. Realistically, Dragapult doesn't need any new cards to be an S-tier deck post-rotation. And if the Pokemon TCG Live dev truly hates us as much as I think they do, it will be given away as one of the free decks starting on March 27th, meaning it'll be everywhere all at once. In terms of the best F-block cards leaving Dragapult, it's familiar faces Rotom V, Lumineon V, and Forest Sealstone, as well as Temple of Sinnoh and Collapse Stadium. For the ones exclusive to Dragapult, Radiant, Alakazam, and Lance are gone. Because of Badoo, losing Lance is worse than facing Lance for the first time and learning that Dragon types seemingly resist everything. Being able to just grab 3 dragons from deck was extremely powerful. and Radiant Alakazam leaving means it'll be tougher to spread damage counters around. For those of us who hate facing Dragapult, these losses might seem devastating. Well, as you saw in my last video, Dragapult is still an S tier deck. Instead of Lance, you run Jacques or Brock Scouting. They're basically the same as Lance except nerfed. Jacques only works with evolutions, while Brock can either get 2 basics or 1 evolution. Definitely not ideal. Just like Charizard, there's no replacing the Lost Radiant and V Pokemon. But, unlike Gardevoir, Dragapult still has access to a Stage 1 for continuous card draw. And thanks to Hawlucha essentially taking Alakazam's spot, all those 70 hit point basics are still within Phantom Dive range. And if they try to get cute with Rabsca, you can just Dust Noir it to hell. So don't cry too hard for the derpy dragon. Here's what Dragapult looks like post-rotation. Unfair Stamp has far and away been the ace spec of choice, sending your opponent down to 2 cards in hand while giving you 5 if they just took a KO. Personally, I still prefer Sparkling Crystal, but that's because it requires me to think less. If you're worried about the energy situation, Crispin can power up a naked Dragapult while experience share preserves an energy. To make the deck even stronger, 2 Badoo are in every list, and they even throw in a Blood Moon Ursaluna for good measure. There's very minor variations you can make to Dragapult, like going for a 2-2-1 Dust Noir line, but for the most part, this is the list you'll see. Now, what if you want to jam 2 of the strongest decks together? Well, you can still do that. Combining Charizard with Dragapult gives you the energy acceleration and power of Charizard plus the card draw and spread capabilities of Dragapult. You can probably see from this list why Milotic and other wall decks have been doing so well lately. There's no counter to them here. But if you can avoid Milotic and Mimikyu and Aegislash and the upcoming Crustle and Destined rivals, well, you won't have an S tier deck. It's sort of like how multiplying anything by 0 equals 1. Just because you take an S tier deck and add it to an A tier deck doesn't mean you have an S plus deck. It's more like an A-. You play TM Evolution and Pokemon League HQ to try and play around any Badoo shenanigans, and that's about it. It's literally just combining Dragapult and Charizard. Since Charizard accelerates energy when you evolve into it, you can power up any of your attackers in 1 turn. From there, pick and choose whoever's best for the situation and try to win. Just like Dragapult, I feature Gholdengo in my best decks with new cards video. There it added Lavincia to recycle Lightning Energy and a Dunsparce EX as a backup attacker. Realistically though, you don't have to make any additions. I think Lavincia makes Gholdengo better and a Dunsparce adds a tiny bit more flexibility, but if you spent your last $5 on a Twitch subscription to your favorite PTCGL streamer and don't have any money left, you can get by with old cards. In terms of what Gholdengo loses with rotation, depending on which version you are playing, Radiant Greninja and Pokestop might be the only significant ones. Otherwise, Palkia V-Star, Irida, Canceling Cologne, and Lost Vacuum Leaving do suck, but you can easily recover from them. And the way you make it happen is with Dragapult EX. Yes, Gholdengo is yet another archetype that can take advantage of one of the strongest Stage 2 Pokemon ever printed. The strategy with this Gholdengo build isn't all that different from a regular Gholdengo deck. You get your basics down early, try to TM Evolution into your Stage 1s for card draw, then take big KOs. The difference here is that you have even more Stage 1s for even more card draw, as well as a backup attacker who can soften up targets. Thanks to 2 copies of Crispin, getting Dragapult powered up isn't all that difficult either. Since you are susceptible to Mimikyu, if you don't want to rely on Dracloak as your counter, chuck in a copy of Surging Sparks Gholdengo, which can do 240 damage to Mimikyu through weakness. Because of all that card draw, Cypher Maniac's code breaking is never a bad idea. It's just that you'll be seeing upwards of 10 cards per turn if everything's going right, so it's not necessarily necessary. I will say that the Dunsparce and Scizor builds of Gholdengo have been performing better overall, but the number of first place finishes for the Dragapult version means you'll still see it quite a bit on PTCGL. Alright, I've chill teaser toyed you long enough. Thanks to the removal of V, V-Star, and V-Maxes from Standard, my Milotic EX wall becomes a lot stronger with rotation. Since it didn't really exist pre-rotation due to the amount of counters, there aren't any losses. Instead, it gains a narrower meta where the top deck is a Terra, the second best is a basic EX, and most of the other A and B tier decks rely on abilities. The cards you need to care about the most are Milotic EX, Feraligatr EX, and Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX. Milotic blocks all the Terras like Dragapult, Charizard, and Ceruledge. Feraligatr is your counter to Raging Bolt, Hopzation, and any other basic EX decks. And Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon prevents all damage from Pokemon with an ability while also featuring an attack that goes through abilities like Mimikyu's. I will say that this deck performed really well at the start of the format. It's still super strong and will garner many concedes on PTCGL, but at least in Japan, players have shifted a little more towards putting Milotic and Feraligatr rather than going with a straight wall deck. If you want to annoy people on live though, the basic strategy here is get off to a good start. So long as you get down whichever basics you need turn 1, then can evolve your Feebas before Dragapult chews through it like a pair of socks, your odds of winning increase dramatically. From there, Crispin and Turbo Energize get your energy into play, while Monkey Dory can help heal anyone who gets damaged. Then pretend it's OG Fortnite and use whichever wall is best for the situation, 2 or 3-shotting your opponent's Pokemon in the process. Because you need that fast start, Totsugiri and Squawkabilly EX are great options for improving your consistency. Noivern EX meanwhile helps against every basic deck, and Mimikyu helps against every EX deck. Speaking of Feraligatr, which I mentioned like 2 minutes ago, it's one of the strongest budget decks post-rotation. I faced off against this thing countless times pre-rotation, and it really does feel like Snorlax style reborn. Games take forever, you'll sit for long periods of time doing nothing, and then eventually you'll lose because it's actually good. To keep it cheap, I won't include Milotic, just be aware that it helps against Dragapult. Otherwise, like Marissa Tomei, this is the ideal 60. What makes Feraligatr so strong post-rotation is a few things. For starters, Switch Card is gone. This leaves Switch and Prime Catcher as our item-based Switch cards. Kieran, Surfer, and Turo Scenario are supporter-based Switch effects, but most decks play maybe one of those total. This means there will be an over-reliance on things like Rescue Board and Latias EX for retreating. Why is this important? Because Totodile's Big Bite prevents retreating, but it only does 10 damage. How is that a winning strategy? Well, it requires the combo of Feraligatr, Monkey Dory, and Relicanth. Relicanth allows your Feraligatr and Croconaw to copy Totodile's Big Bite, thus trapping someone in the active every turn. Then you use Monkey Dory's ability to take damage counters from your Pokemon and move them to your opponent's Pokemon. Here's where the real spice appears though. Feraligatr's ability puts 5 damage counters on itself, allowing its attacks to deal 120 more damage. So now Big Bite is dealing 130 instead of 10, and 2 Monkey Dory are able to fully heal your Feraligatr. It's an infuriating combo, and if you don't have any outs to break the retreat lock, you're better off giving up. There's a few other cards to consider with Feraligatr. Badoo shuts off their items, potentially buying you some time. That time is important because this deck doesn't run rare candy. If you are having trouble getting Feraligatr into play quickly though, go with Grand Tree instead of Precious Trolley as your ace spec. However, in order to find Grand Tree, you'll need to run Colress's Thicacity. But if you have Colress in your discard pile, Kyurem and Slowking can attack for a single energy, turning that match into an auto loss if you aren't careful. For a little more flexibility, you can play the Flute to try and bring down some basics they don't want in play, except it'll fail 90% of the time. And De-Evolution is a fun way to punish evolution decks, taking KOs almost out of nowhere. Finally, we have Slowking, another great single prize post-rotation deck that unfortunately might fade away when Bench Barrier Shaman arrives in Destined Rivals on May 29th. But those 2 months between Journey Together and Destined Rivals will be wonderful. For a Psychic and a Colorless, Slowking discards the top card of your deck. If that card is a Pokemon without a rule box, you can copy any attack it has. The best one is Kyurem, which does 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. Manaphy's gone, so everyone on the bench except Terras are free targets unless someone's crazy enough to play Rabska. But that's not all. To one-shot Terras like Dragapult and Charizard, there's Regigigas who does 330 damage to them. Conkeldurr is an easy 250 to everybody, while Annihilate KOs both actives. It's risky as you lose your Slowking in the process, but used properly it means no one is out of your range. Because of the loss of Heavy Ball, there's 2 copies of Kyurem in the list. If you're going to win with regularity, you're going to need it. Every other attacker is limited to 1 copy, so it can get a little sketchy if PTCGL screws you over with prizes. Xatu is your energy accelerator, able to attach a Psychic Energy from hand to one of your bench Pokemon, drawing you 2 cards in the process. This allows you to attack with Mimikyu and, to a lesser extent, Regigigas. Jet Energy helps prevent anyone from getting trapped, and Badoo is Captain Annoyance. Now, there are some issues with Slowking, it can simply run out of gas. Because you always have to have the Pokemon to copy on top of your deck, you rely on Academy at Night, Cypher Maniacs Code Breaking, Night Stretcher, and Max Rod. Don't get me wrong, when Slowking works, it's extremely powerful. But I've won numerous games against it already simply because they couldn't attack quickly enough. There isn't a whole lot you can do to improve the list. Zoroark is useful against Raging Bolt when they attach Bravery Charm, putting it out of Conkeldurr range. But even then, they have to have 5 EXs in play. And Lonazade is another way to recover Pokemon and energy, but that's about it. As per usual, you can find lists for all the decks featured in this video in the description and comments. What's clear is that while this rotation is impactful, removing the last of the Sword and Shield cards, Journey Together doesn't bring too many must-play cards outside of Lilius Clefairy EX. You can still get by using 2024 cards in 2025 and dominate the meta. If you can think of any other old decks that get better post-rotation, print out the list and DM me a picture of you holding the paper between your toes.